Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to Synchronicity University. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. This video is looking at Saturn in the sign of Virgo in the natal chart, Saturn in the 6th house in the natal chart, and also Saturn transiting through the 6th house. So we're going to take those one at a time. Now, in modern Western astrology, there is a natural correspondence, a connection between certain signs and houses, okay? So there's a natural connection between the sign of Virgo and the 6th house, but the two are not the same thing. So if you have your Saturn in the sign of Virgo, you will relate to the stuff that has to do with Saturn and Virgo, and some of the stuff that has to do with Saturn in the 6th house. But I would advise you to watch the video also that has to do with the specific house that your Saturn is in for a more complete picture of what it is that's coming up ahead. And also, Saturn transiting through a certain house will, in addition to, will raise its own issues, okay, unique issues, which we'll talk about, but also will bring with it a feeling of, or an awareness of, some of the issues that people with Saturn in that part of the sky always feel as well. So let's start with Saturn in the sign of Virgo. Virgo is the sign of, ultimately, I think of it as a sign of putting in the hours. That's really what it comes down to. To me, I sum up the energy of Virgo with this idea that was put out by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers. And he talked about this theory of 10,000 hours. Anything you do for 10,000 hours, you are an expert in. The energy of Virgo is the 10,000 hours. It's understanding that if you put in the time, you will be good, but you've got to put in the time. You've got to be diligent with it. And that is ultimately how, moment by moment, you build a level of expertise. So all the earth signs in their own way are interested in sort of establishing themselves as good in their own way. So Taurus does it in a way kind of by show, right? I'm good because I know like the best of the senses, basically. Virgo is, I'm good because I'm the best, I'm good, I'm an expert because I've put in the time. And then Capricorn, as the other earth sign, is I'm good because I'm an authority. You know, I stayed the course, I stayed the whole way, I stayed the path, and now it's time for me to reap reward. So with the Virgo energy, it is about that journey. When you have Saturn in Virgo, it's about really coming to own that part of you that knows you've got to put in the time. Now, wherever Saturn is in a chart, there can be a resistance, okay? It can feel like it's not as easy as you might otherwise like it to be, but there's also a real appreciation that what you put in, you get out. So with Saturn, it's often said that Saturn is rewards. Yes, Saturn is rewards if you take ownership for those rewards, if you do the work. But if you're not doing the work, if you're only wishing or hoping or having the ideas, but you're not following it up with action, Saturn isn't going to allow anything to happen. It matches you with what you give and with where you are. It gives you that reality check and that feedback so that you know how effective are you, so that you can be honest with yourself. How much are you actually giving earnestly, honestly, and effectively based on what you are manifesting? When Saturn is in the sign of Virgo for a person, it really is about moving beyond any kind of restriction that would get in the way from putting in that time. It is about understanding that, yes, there is time that needs to be put in, but you can do it in a way that doesn't feel like it's holding you back, that doesn't feel like a burden, but you can do it in a way that ultimately gives you a sense of self-respect and a sense of stability. And even though sometimes that process may be resisted, it's Saturn, resistance does come up, there's an understanding, that obligation energy that says, you got to do this. So there's a real understanding that if you're really going to earn a measure of self-respect, find a genuine sense of happiness, you've got to allow yourself to become good enough, to stay with something long enough, to do something long enough, to know that you are doing it well. And to believe it that you're doing it well by demonstrating it to yourself. Because Saturn doesn't like belief, right, for its own sake. That's Jupiter. And even Neptune, right? Jupiter says, you know, I believe it, be it. That's very Jupiterian. Saturn says, no, I believe it because I've done it, because I've experienced it. I've been there, done that. That's how I know it to be true. So Saturn says, put in the time, show yourself that you know your stuff again and again, and then that will allow you to go out there and show other people that you know your stuff as well. So these can be people who can put in the time to be like really good, like technically at something, technical musicians, making technical arguments, being able to understand what otherwise might be complex because they've just put in the time and put in those steps to understand one little at a time, a little at a time, a little at a time. Also with Saturn in Virgo types, Virgo to me is very much an energy of body and of awareness in body. And so people with Saturn in Virgo, they are going to have sort of a heightened awareness of what's happening to them on a physical level. And look, a lot of people out there, you know, it's always a good idea to check in with yourself and to trust yourself above and beyond what anyone else might tell you. But I actually think that there's this very interesting dichotomy that takes place with people with Saturn in Virgo, where that on the one hand, you know that Saturn is the tried and true. Saturn is the expert. Saturn is what's been demonstrated repeatedly. And so that tends to be what's established. But Saturn in Virgo, and Virgo says, I know myself. I know what I feel. I know when something's on. I know when something's off. And that knowing is more meaningful than what someone else might say. So there's this real need to come to understand when to listen to established authority figures where it comes to matters of your health, and where it is that you have to trust yourself above and beyond what anyone else might tell you. That if you know something's off, you've got to be connected to that. You've got to find a way to speak for that, even in times when that feels challenging, even when times when that feels difficult as well. So Saturn, ultimately in Virgo, also, I think of this, you know, the connection to body has to do with the earth goddess energy. So all the earth signs have that element, they're feminine signs, they have that earth gaudiness, but I think that Virgo especially really amplifies that earth goddess element, where it really becomes about sort of, I don't want to say as simple as honoring the earth, but really honoring the fact that we are incarnated for a reason and allowing yourself to have that experience and to be in that experience in terms of awareness of what's happening to you on a level of your physical body is a part of that awareness as well. And as such, they can be very, very present for moments when it's probably good to be present as well. So allowing that process to happen, getting out of the way, because sometimes Saturn can feel like a block or a restriction, allowing that to get out of the way so that they can actually enjoy the different processes of being alive and being incarnated is also part of their journey as well. Now, Saturn in the 6th house, the 6th house has to do with co-workers. It has to do with people we hire as well. And it has to do with our health practices. So 6th house, people with Saturn natally in the 6th house, I gotta say, this can feel like the people who are working for you are, I mean, it can feel challenging to find like people, good people to work with you. Now you can of course find them, and especially depending on how that Saturn is aspected, makes a big difference. But these can be people who, depending on that Saturn, can find it either difficult to have employees, difficult to hold on to employees. And this can be anything from like people who do service from you. So this could be your coworkers, right? Like you have to learn to be a little, like hold back a little bit and be really formal with people in the work environment as part of the learning, and you may be. But also when I think about higher people, I think about people that are covered by the 6th house are hairdressers, right? People who you might hire to clean your house, people like service people, the people you hire to complete services for you. And that includes doctors as well. But when we have Saturn in this part of the sky, it's these relationships that can feel a little challenging, or it can feel hard to find the right expert. And when you do find the right expert, there can be other sort of barriers that might feel like they are there in regards to that as well. There's going to be a real desire and a real like way to sort of channel this energy well is to go to people who have experience, really, the tried and true, the people who've been doing it for a really long time. So when I see Saturn in the 6th house and you're saying, you know, I'm really trying to find somebody, I want to hire somebody to do this for me, I say, okay, find somebody who's been doing it for a really long time. Don't go to, again, all else being equal, there are some placements in a chart that say, you know what, you should go to family. There's some placements in a chart that say, like if you have the moon here maybe, right? Depending again on how that moon is aspected, but the ruler of the 4th maybe, would say, you know, it's good to hire your family. You might have placements here that say it's good to hire like people who are really young or don't have a lot of experience or experimenting. So that's like Mercury and Uranus, that type of energy would say that. If we see Jupiter in this part of the sky, you know, it's about hiring those people who really have a vision. So you want to look at. When you have Saturn in the 6th house and you want to hire somebody from a hairdresser to a cleaner or whatever, you want to hire the person who's been doing it for a really long time, who really shows that they know the basics. So it's not like they're, you know, trying all kinds of wild new things or they're trying to be all experimental with you, but they've established themselves. And also that they have the credentials. With Saturn, credentials are really important. So make sure that they have, you want that person to do your hair who's, you know, has all the certificates and has studied with all the big dogs in that world. That's the person that you actually want doing your hair. That's the person who has all the certificates, the education you want, being your doctor, being your web designer, being your cleaner. So these are things that you want to look for. Look for older people, people with lots of experience, people with lots of credentials, is one way to negate the energy with this that has to do with ultimately feeling, because you don't want this energy to manifest in a way that has to do with feeling restricted, feeling held back, feeling like they are not doing what you want them to do. You know, like feeling the challenging aspect that Saturn can bring. The way you negate that is you go to its positive aspect. And so that's one way that you can channel the more positive element to this. But look, here's the thing. One of those ways, if you end up manifesting the not so positive elements of this, is that you just don't like the work as well. Like you just can't seem to find a good hairdresser. You just can't seem to find a doctor that really feels like they get you on a really basic level. It can be hard to find good help, you know, as they say, it's hard to find good help. That's what can happen sometimes with this energy if you don't channel it effectively. Now, this is also health practices. So life is going to constantly ask you to create structure around how it is that you're taking care of yourself. You know, what is it that you're doing to make sure that you are getting to the gym 3 times a week at the exact same time, at the exact same days, to create those structures, to not be very willy-nilly with this. And life will sometimes have you manifesting situations ultimately that are going to ask you, how do you feel? You know, you could be feeling better. So what do you need to change? What do you need to do so that you actually can feel better as well? So focus on health structures, health disciplines, health practices tend to be how this energy manifests as well. When Saturn moves into the 6th house, now, Saturn moving into the 6th house doesn't necessarily mean that you start feeling not healthy, okay? Because that's something I hear quite a bit. If people say, oh my God, Saturn's going to be in my 6th, I'm worried about this. First of all, don't worry. Nothing good comes from worrying, okay? And that's, if you have Saturn in Virgo, you may know that either you really get that or you really can't get that, okay? Again, depending on how that Saturn is aspected. But Saturn in the 6th house, transiting in the 6th house, can sometimes bring with it an awareness that you could be feeling a lot better, brings with it a shift in how it is that you're feeling in your body. So this can be something as simple as all of a sudden you're feeling a lot more tired. That can happen. Saturn is tiredness, right? So it is sort of weight ultimately. So people might gain weight. They might feel tired. They might feel burdened is really what it comes down to. Feeling burdened. Sometimes that burden, it can manifest different ways. Saturn, with its connection to Capricorn, has to do with the joints. But when I think of, like the god of time, the Mayan god of time, he's carrying something on his shoulders. And this is a very like sort of strong image we see in mythology around the world, this idea that time is something we carry on our shoulders, right? It's like a weight that weighs us down like that. And so with Saturn moving into the 6th house, it can literally, that part of the body, even though, okay, this is from my experience, because even though the shoulders are generally a 3rd house thing, still, I do think that it can just start to feel, so that ends up contributing to maybe some joint issues or whatever. Now, ultimately, this is about taking ownership. That's what Saturn is. Saturn says take ownership for where you are and where you want to go and do the work. So over the 3 years or so, depending on how big the house is for you, but normally it's about a 3-year cycle when Saturn moves through a house. This can be a time when you slowly transform your health and be stronger and better than ever, and really do things and put things into place that will allow you to experience a strong, stable sense of well-being for a very long time to come. But it tends to, and especially if you're one of those people, and especially when it's Saturn, look, Saturn, a lot of us, right, we only change when, we don't change when something's working. We change when we realize something's not working. And with Saturn especially, Saturn is all about honesty. So if something's not working, you are going to become aware of it. And so it can come on sometimes in ways or in processes or feelings that feel undesirable. But at the end of the day, when that does come, it is ultimately about empowering you. It is about you understanding that there are things that you can do to feel better right now. Now, when it comes to medical astrology, I'm just going to go a little bit a segue here for just a couple seconds and say, in medical astrology, when you look at a chart, right, the 6th house is health practices, right? And it's doctor's appointments and things like that. The 8th house is surgery, but the 1st house is vitality. And so when I look at a chart, yes, sometimes you might see Saturn in the 6th house. Yeah, that makes you go, oh, okay, I hope everything's okay. You might see stuff happening in the 8th house as well that says, oh, okay, maybe this person might need surgery, could benefit from surgery, or it might come up out of nowhere. But if you see the 1st house, the ruler of the 1st house is strong, the 1st house is healthy. What I mean by that is the ruler of the 1st house and any planets in the 1st house are getting positive transits or have natally positive aspects to it. That tells me that the person is okay. So ultimately, I don't want to freak anybody out. That's the thing. I don't want to freak you out. Just because Saturn is moving to the 6th house doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's a big concern. Where it comes to, if you're a student of astrology and you're just, it's really important when you're really early on not to freak yourself out, of course, but also just know that, just having Saturn move to the 6th doesn't mean health issues necessarily will arise. And even if they do, it doesn't mean that it's anything necessarily serious. There are a lot of other things you want to see in the chart that would indicate that you're fine or that it is something more serious and how you can go about addressing it as well. So Saturn has to do, moving to the 6th house has to do with health. This can also bring a change in your coworkers that start acting like your boss when they're not. That can happen. This can bring a lot of power games and stuff I've found as well in the work environment. And so then it becomes up to you to decide if that's something you want to engage in or not. And a part of the way that some people navigate this is that they learn to do their work and disengage from the more personal, emotional dynamics at work. So they learn to focus in on what they need to do to strengthen the work that they're doing and to detach from any kind of emotional dynamics that might be playing out around them. Because sometimes Saturn moves into the 6th house and work environment becomes drama. If you are self-employed, this just becomes a time when you really feel like you want to work more and you got to work more. You're attracting more work. There will be more work. There will be more clients. Depending on what else is happening in the chart, you want to see stuff happening in the 2nd and the 10th to see if that's actually benefiting you financially or in the big picture. But just Saturn moving through the 6th means that you're having to work more effectively. You are motivated to work more. You see the value, the big picture of your life if you do the work now. So you're motivated to do that. And there's a real need to establish some structures and to put in the work in projects that are bigger picture aimed. So put the energy towards projects that will, for example, help you establish your expertise, will help you to earn money for a long time to come, will help you with actually achieving something grander, leaving a legacy. So it isn't just about the work you need to do. It isn't just about a day job, but it becomes more meaningful to you as well. Well, thank you so much for watching. I love your interactions, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, my website, nadiyashah.com, YouTube comments as well. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I'm so grateful for your very positive energy, your amazing feedback. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Until we connect again, take care. Thank you for watching this lesson as part of Synchronicity University. You can go online at synchronicityuniversity.com or click on your screen if you're on YouTube right now to access even more video lessons, to access horoscopes, interviews with some of the most amazing astrologers in the world, and so much more.